Canelo Alvarez defeats John Ryder by unanimous decision with a strong performance. Where does he go from here? 168-pound undisputed world champion. He's back. He's back. And what about the zone? What's with charging all the pay-per-view and then not giving us the in-between rounds talking every time? What's with that? What's with the commercials? And if I'm paying pay-per-view, what's with the commercials, dude? People have a right to hear every single round in between instructions, not just certain rounds that are chosen. Paulie malignaggi. This is Paulie TV, and this is the breakdown for Canelo Alvarez versus John Ryder. So, the question going in for Canelo Alvarez was, how was he going to be? How was he going to be the same Canelo Alvarez? Was it going to be the Canelo Alvarez that had been dominant just a few years ago, just a couple of years ago, with big wins over Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant, where he beat not only very good fighters, but he beat them very, very well, you know? Of late, we know that he had some subpar performances. Obviously, the B-ball fight really was disappointing for Canelo fans and Canelo himself. The Golovkin fight, you know, you can actually talk about that. He did hurt his hand, but nonetheless, it's subpar. Despite the injury, you're wondering if he's going to come back with a strong hand and put on a performance against Ryder, who, again, as I told you before, was a capable guy, knew his way around the ring, and knew how to be crafty in there and make Canelo work. I think this was actually a perfect fight because psychologically for Canelo, it was a homecoming. So he gets kind of his bearings going. He kind of gets the oil back in his joint, so to speak, and can push that. Also, John Ryder didn't have the thing that really stuck out to me the most. John Ryder didn't have the firepower to keep Canelo off him, and in a small ring, let's face it, Guadalajara, they knew how to give the advantages to Canelo Alvarez. The ring was very, very small, so John Ryder had to constantly try to keep Canelo off of him, and he didn't have the firepower to get Canelo's respect. So Canelo was always constantly, in his face. Good on Ryder to, he did some good things where he kind of pushed around and bullied around Canelo at times, and got him to the ropes and started using that little short left uppercut on the inside. Even late in the fight, Canelo still has these conditioning problems late in the fight where he slows down, because I thought as the fight was coming to the later part of the fight, later stages, who knows, maybe the late knockout was there. I actually had said I thought Canelo was going to win by a late knockout or a decision, and as it got to the late parts of the fight, especially with the bleeding nose, who knows if John Ryder, he was having trouble breathing, who knows if his nose was broken, I started to think, he might break down Ryder enough to get the stoppage, especially, too, that Canelo had landed some very good body shots early in the fight, so that's going to break down Ryder. He possibly broken Ryder's nose. Definitely Ryder's nose was filled with blood, so you're not getting a lot of oxygen through your nose, so it's less breathing for you, so that's going to also affect you and fatigue you as well. I thought it was a good opportunity for Canelo to really put a statement stoppage in there, but he did slow down late in the fight, which has sort of been a kryptonite for him. He tends to slow down late in these fights, and he did slow down there, and it gave Ryder a chance to really look okay late in the fight, land his share of shots as well. They both put on an entertaining display. It was a good performance of boxing for both guys. I think fight lives up to it. Ultimately, you were never expecting a complete give and take affair, but it had some good exchanges. Ryder held his ground a lot of times, even though he was being walked down. He fired back. He was crafty in there, used that little shoulder on the inside to try to bump off Canelo and try to create space for that left uppercut. Let's talk about the knockdown Canelo scored in the fifth round. It was a straight right hand. I like the way he was setting it up early on in the fight, right? He's going down to the body, and he's also throwing those right hands around the side of the guard of Ryder, which against southpaws is a weapon I actually like to see right-handers use. I think left-handers can also use it against southpaws, but as a right-hander, Canelo was using it, and also as a right-hander, it was something that I used to like to use as well against southpaws, especially against southpaws who don't have fast legs. Conor McGregor was actually a sucker for this punch. The overhand right for right-handers against the southpaw stance. And you could see Canelo was using it very, very well early in the fight. Some of the shots were getting blocked, yes, but overall they were getting around the guard, and I think that's partially the reason why Ryder's nose got busted up early in the fight. So you get Ryder thinking body, you get Ryder thinking the right hand around the guard. So remember, especially a lot of counterpunching defense is anticipation. So you get Ryder starting to anticipate these right hands coming around the side, and he's thinking them because they've done some damage, and he's thinking about them. And now subconsciously he's kind of, every time Canelo gets closer, he's trying to brace for that right hand that's coming around the side. And that's why the straight right hand was so brilliant when Canelo threw it, because you could see it completely caught Ryder off guard. He hadn't really seen that straight right hand at that point. He had seen it coming around the side, and the around the side right right hand, as I said, had done enough damage to be on Ryder's mind. And then all of a sudden, Canelo shot a sharp straight right hand down the middle, and it was a good knockdown. And honestly, I like the way Ryder recovered from it. He took his count very calmly, like a veteran, and he got himself back into the fight. And like I said, I think by the end of the fight, he was actually, even doing well enough to get some rounds. One judge, I guess he filled out his scorecard before the fight happened and gave Ryder no rounds at all. And anybody could just do that in a fight where you got, a stadium full of Mexicans. Nobody would ever complain if you get every single round for the guy. But that would. You kind of figure that was just one jerk-off judge who never even planned to give Ryder any credit for the fight, But nonetheless, a good performance for Canelo. I think a good performance for Ryder in terms that he keeps his value. I think Ryder could ultimately still get in the ring, and honestly, he kept enough value to where you'd like to see him against the Caleb Plants of the world. You'd like to see him against, well, maybe not Billy Joe, because I think Billy Joe's done, but you'd like to see him against certain guys. If Benavidez doesn't fight Canelo next, which I think should be the fight at 168, you wouldn't mind seeing Ryder against Benavidez as well. Ryder did well for himself in defeat, and Canelo also did well for himself in the win, because it was a dominant enough win. Listen, it was a Ryder gave back what he could, but it was a dominant enough win to where he was able to sort of put himself back on the map, especially after the two performances he had last year. This was a fight where you say, okay, this is why Canelo is the undisputed champion, and this is why you really can't really pick anybody against him at super middleweight. And the fight you really have to make is Benavidez, because anybody else at super middleweight is sort of a waste of time, This was looked at as as sort of a setup fight, as what do they call it, a showcase fight. But I always thought Ryder was a little bit better than just a showcase opponent. But ultimately, Canelo did make it a showcase performance. Yes, he got working against Ryder. Ryder also got working against him. Ryder was just good enough to test Canelo just enough to make him work. And that actually is good for Canelo, because you want to get this kind of performance in. Yes, I'm sure all the Canelo fans wanted to see the stoppage, but ultimately, the fact that he gets 12 rounds against a guy who wouldn't stop resisting, but a guy who ultimately wasn't strong enough and was just slightly not good enough to resist him enough to get the better of him, it's a fight that does well for Canelo, because he's able to test out the hand that came back from the injury. He's able to get in the rounds. He's able to still see certain things, which are that he still has trouble late in the fight closing the show, as in regards to keeping his endurance up. Because sometimes it may not be about the late part of the fight closing the show. Sometimes it may be about the late part of the fight trying to maintain a lead, or even in a 50-50 fight trying to make sure you close it so you win the fight. And so Canelo's had trouble with this, and it's something that he can still address while he wins this fight, and he can go back to the drawing board and say, okay, so I like the way I did this. I like the way I did this. I personally like the way he varied his attack. I personally think that was something really well. And like I said, I explained earlier, I think that's what caused the knockdown, was the good variation of the attack. I thought the body punching was very good. I thought he could have went more to it in the second half of the fight, because in the first half of the fight, I thought he went to the body a lot more than he did in the second half of the fight, and I could feel like Ryder was specifically slowing down, but then I felt like Canelo went away from it. Maybe it was because Ryder started getting aggressive himself and started throwing more shots, but nonetheless, two things I would like to see Canelo work on: the endurance late part of the fight, and also changing the look. I know Canelo likes to fight at a slow pace, but if you don't have a change of look, it's hard to get really top guys to respect your pace. Mayweather always fought at a slow pace, but he fought from so many different looks that he made the opponent constantly readjust to the target. And also Mayweather could fight out of all those looks. He could punch out of all those looks. So automatically, every time a new look was being given, their opponent had to respect it. They had to respect the fact that Mayweather knew how to defend from it, knew how to punch from it, knew how to fight from it. Canelo gives you one look, but yet he tries to hold the pace to a very, very slow pace. And some guys, like the Bivol of the world, maybe even the Benavidez of the world, are not going to respect that, because they're not going to have enough to think about if you just have one look. They are already going to see what they see, and they're going to be able to adjust to that target and understand how the punches are coming from that target. Good on Canelo to vary the attack, though. I thought the attack was very well varied to the body and to the head. The shots, like I said, the roundhouse rights to the head against a southpaw, I think, are always a brilliant punch. They tend to work very well, and they worked here in this fight. And they also worked in terms of Canelo not getting too greedy with them going back to the straight right hand and getting the knockdown by use of the psychological destruction that he had done to Ryder, and making him overthink about those roundhouse right hands. So where does Canelo go from here? I think it's a Benavidez fight. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer at this point. Bivol, I saw a quote where he said he wants the same fight with the same terms against Bivol. I think he's smoking drugs if he thinks he's going to get the same terms against Bivol, because Bivol himself had said that the first fight with Canelo, he had taken it for shorter money for the opportunity. But for a rematch, he deserves the lion's share, or at least a lot more money than he was given in the first fight. So I don't know if Canelo, talking about those same terms, is trying to play mind games there, so that then when Bivol says no, he can make it look like Bivol is ducking him. But I think if he gives Bivol the terms he deserves, I think Bivol will take that fight wholeheartedly. I personally don't want to see it. I personally think it's the same kind of fight. It's the same kind of one-sided fight. I want to see Canelo against David Benavidez. Benavidez looked a little, he showed some flaws in his style against Caleb Plant, which I kind of always figured would happen against a guy like Caleb Plant as Benavidez raises his level of opposition. And Canelo has shown against Ryder that he's worked on the things that he needs to work on, as far as the hand being healthy, getting the 12 rounds against a solid, stiff opponent, so that he could be able to work on all the things in the ring that he needs to in those 12 rounds. So I think Canelo looked good. I think Benavidez looked good. And I think the question marks are up in the air just enough to make this fight. And that's the fight you have to make. And again, this is where you start putting pressure on Canelo. If he's the face of boxing and he gives us lays another egg as far as the opponent he chooses for the next fight. This is, again, I mean, I hate to say, I know Canelo has a lot of guys, a lot of people that love him, but again, this is why, when you're the name of boxing, if you want to be the name of boxing, yes, you get that respect, but you also get that responsibility. You got the Ryder fight, it was good. I personally was entertained by it, but ultimately you need to now get that opponent, that marquee opponent. And I don't want Bivol. I know he's talking about Bivol, but he's trying to also underpay Bivol, and also just the fact that Bivol fight is not a good fight to me. Benavidez is a good fight to me because you're putting the undisputed title on the line. You got to stop trying to also save the undisputed title to where you don't put it on the line, and so you always have it, and you keep the entire weight class at 168 hostage. You got to keep defending that title, otherwise he needs to be stripped of these belts. You got to give the other guys a chance, especially a guy like Benavidez. He deserves a shot at the world title, especially if the title is undisputed right now with Canelo. I think it will be a monster pay-per-view. I think people would be very curious about it, and I think honestly you have a split as far as who people would think would win. But again, coming off of a performance where you got momentum back now, you got to make this kind of fight. And for John Ryder, like I said, I mean, I think he doesn't lose any value here in this fight. I think he fought well, he fought respectable. He went the distance with Canelo in a fight where he landed a couple of his share of good, decent shots as well. He showed some crafty ring generalship on the inside as well, and was able to bully Canelo in spots. So I think Ryder against any of the other great super middleweights or top super middleweights would also be a good fight and an entertaining fight. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think about Canelo's performance. Are you guys disappointed that he didn't get the stoppage? I know a lot of Canelo fans were thinking he was definitely going to get the stoppage and that this was a showcase fight. I personally don't mind it. Again, I think that he got a lot of rounds in, and he got the rounds in that he needed, and he got to work on a lot of things in there. And I like the way he was varying his attack. Personally, I enjoyed that part of it. Where I was watching him vary his attack, and that it was effective. Also, you get to see the late part of the fight where he does need to still work on his conditioning, and so let's see if that still remains a problem in the future. I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV, and like I said, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think about Canelo Alvarez and John Ryder.